On another Let's Talk with the Doc. I'm excited to be here as always, and I am no less excited tonight because I have a young lady with a new perspective or a different perspective on life, at least for now. And I can't wait to hear what is her story. I have Nicole Plummer with me, and when I come back, I am really going to have a conversation with her because she has a unique story that you need to listen to. And you need to invite your friends to join us so we can all journey with Nicole when I come back. ORB Ministry presents Let's Talk with the Doc. Grace Without Borders podcast. A thought for you. Ask Pastor. And a whole lot more. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. All right. So here we are. Here we are with a young, upcoming minister. I must say, I'm jumping out on a limb to say that. And we have Nicole Plummer, and she has written a book that we will talk about later on that is entitled Begin to Be. Kind of weird kind of title, right? But hey, it's personal. So we're going to find out what her story is when we get there. But before we get there, I want to find out who is this young lady and what shapes her life and how did she get to where she is. So welcome, Nicole, to Let's Talk with the Dog. Good to have you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Orville. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here and to speak to your audience and just to share more about my story and begin to be.
All right. So we say everybody has a story, everyone has a story, and everybody's story is unique. And just talking to you before we get to where we are, and I'm finding out a little bit of things in the latter part of your story. So, but we need to find out tell me something about Nicole, where Nicole was born, where she grew up, what's the family dynamics, how many siblings, where she fall into it, what was it like? We doesn't kind of probe to get to the begin to be. Let's go back to the early beginning before we get to begin to be.
Sounds great. Well, I was born and raised in South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida area, which is about an hour above Miami. And I grew up in a household. There's four of us, a mother and a father, and I have an older brother. And we grew up just pretty stable, middle class family values. My family's Jamaican. My parents are Jamaican. So very traditional, typical Jamaican household. And my parents were just amazing providers. My dad was a banker. My mom was a nurse. So they provided any and everything for my brother and I. And we lived in the same city my whole life. We lived in the two different homes, literally in the same city across the street from each other, across the main road, my entire life. So I grew up extremely stable, extremely structured, extremely just given any and everything that a child would need to have a great start to life educationally and amazing resources, extracurricular activities. They put me in everything. My brother and I, dance, piano, ballet, everything you can think of. So that's a little bit about my home upbringing.
Okay, so you were privileged children,
I was
fortunate children.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, is a typical Jamaican family, Jamaican parentage. Tell me a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about a typical Jamaican family as you describe it. What's a typical Jamaican family?
Well, like my dad was definitely a disciplinarian, a strict man, but a very refined man. He was excellent in everything he does. I really looked up to my dad as a kid, and he was really strict on us about getting good grades, maintaining good grades, and just really excelling in life educationally and wanting us to be on the right track, get a good job, get a typical job, nurse, doctor, lawyer. My mom was in.
That's not typical job, for but those are up the upper echelon kind of job, not the bottom line. Say typical is the guy go do some work, get your education so you can, you don't eat your name off something, they say, but like nurse and doctor and lawyer, those are upper echelon kind of jobs.
Yes, they definitely had very high standards for us. We always had to make sure we were on the honor roll, and so externally it was like, we had we s- it from the outside looking in, it's like we had it all together in a sense of just, they just wanted the best for us. And like you said, those are upper echelon type of jobs, so they wanted us to be in that bracket, so to speak.
So your parents weren't settling for average, and I can see why they weren't settling for average because your dad is a banker and your mom is a nurse. You say so, yeah, they're up the ladder, and normally parents want their children to do better than they did or they have done. So they're gonna push you to get beyond where they are. So we can understand that. So all right. So what was the dynamic between you and your brother? Older brother. What was it? How much older than you is he?
He's about 5 years older than me,
That's
and
really
so yeah, so it's almost like we grew up kind of like single, like only children, because the age gap is so.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
when I was in middle school, he was in high school. When he went off to college, then I entered high school. So we kind of grew up almost like,
Not walking hand in hand.
right, right.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. Was he this compassionate, caring brother, or he just mind his own business because he was too big to hang out with his little sister?
He was extremely smart. He was on the football team, and so he excelled in school, and he did very well. And he was social, but a little bit more internal. He and my mom are similar, more internal. My dad and I are a little bit more external. So that was more so like his personality, I would say.
All right, all right, all right. So you had good start, educationally, academically. What was it like in the spiritual side of it? Were your family Christian oriented? What was that like in the early days?
Well, we grew up in the Episcopalian church,
Okay.
our Anglican, as they say, I know in Jamaican culture, British culture. And so, we went to church every Sunday. My dad is very involved. To this day, he's still very involved in the church that I grew up in, the Episcopalian church. And very busy. He's pretty much he like runs the whole church essentially. Like the administrative aspect
Okay.
of things, and he's like the right hand to the priest there. And so I grew up witnessing that. I grew up being like, Winston Plummer's daughter, so it's like I had to be like the good kid and the good child. And if any, I always had to like be on my P's and Q's, and be really, it's like when your parents are in leadership, there's eyes on you, people are
Right.
watching.
Right.
So you always have to just put your best foot forward in front of man and in front of people.
And
And
and from a child's perspective, From a
Yeah.
child's perspective, I'm thinking, I know from the parents' perspective what that looks and feels like, because of, all of my children are born into ministry, if I could say. Um, so I know from a parent's perspective and from the community perspective what they look for and expect of the child from a parent in ministry, deeply involved in church. From the child perspective, how did Nicole assess or evaluate that when you're able to put it together? Did Nicole think, "Oh, I am just a privileged child that my father is so recognized, and I am this unique girl of this man and woman who's so involved in our church"? Or did Nicole think, "My God, there's so much pressure, there's so much expected of me, and I can't be as relaxed as my peers, because I am the daughter of this man, here comes my world becomes very narrow."
Wow. Great insight. Yes, that's an amazing question. I think, you know, hindsight's always 2020. And so as a child, I don't think I was fully aware of my internal world and how I was processing what was going on in my external world. I just knew that a lot of my life felt like we had to put a huge emphasis on the externals. So I don't think that I ever took into account, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What is actually going on inside of me? And so, growing up in a very strict Jamaican culture, you just have to do what you're told. And
Mhm.
so I would say, um, in the church culture I grew up in, with, along with the family dynamic, it was more so just about being good, being on my P's and Q's. I felt I felt the pressure to just be on all the time, and to that I was being watched, and um to just make sure that I don't embarrass my family in any way. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're
so
carrying the
so that so that that was added pressure.
yeah,
Living with this awareness that if I make a mistake, if I did this,
right,
it's gonna reflect on
right,
my family.
right.
Right. All right. Got it. Got it. All right. At, and as you grew, did that pressure get lighter, or the pressure got heavier as you become more aware of the internal and the external?
Well, that's the thing. I think that when you grow up in that type of environment, you almost become robotic in
Mm.
your actions. You become robotic in how you view life, how you view people, even how you view God. I think my view of God was very much so like my dad. Like, God was probably very strict. God expected like perfection, excellence from me, but God wasn't necessarily like relational or relatable, or wanted to draw me in close to him. So um it honestly wasn't until I left that, moved away for college, left that structure, um that my parents had the best of intentions about providing for my brother and I. It's not till I left that structure and dynamic did I then to realize what my true foundation was based off of, if that makes sense.
Did you see God back then like the strict man like your daddy, or a big bad God in heaven somewhere with a big whip saying, "If you dare do that"?
Yes. And so it makes you very performance oriented. I became very performance oriented.
Okay, all right, all
I
right.
became very I would try to earn love by what I did. If I can excel in school with my grades, if I can be the top of my class, if I can, so you start to measure your I started to measure myself according to what I did
Hmm.
and not
Wow.
just who I was.
Wow. All right. My friends, I'm talking to Nicole Plummer, a young lady who has a lot to go after in life, still very young and a lot to pursue. It's a good time to hit your share button because we're gonna get into her 2 year wilderness experience with the Lord and what drove her to write her book that we're going to talk about later on. So you can't afford not to be here. So invite your friends to join us. It's interesting to have a young lady on that we can hear her story. All right. So normally normally when children grow up and they try to stick with the dynamics, as
Right.
you said, live with the expectation, try to please everybody, and not try not to make a mistake, even though that might not be what I really want, but I know what they want, so I'm doing a lot of things for them and not for me.
Right.
How did you balance that? um where did How did Nicole find happiness in doing it for them and not for her? Did the other side of Nicole in the corner said, I wish to God I was able to do something for me, or I wish I was able to do it this way and not offend anybody, and I can't wait to get to the time when I do it for me and not for others?
Wow, such a great question, Dr. Orville. Well, I think that's what happened in life is that I literally created I became a bit of a shell of a woman. I became an actress, so to speak, where I started to live my life according to the expectations of others. And I found myself on this tightrope walk of life where I had to steadily walk across, okay, how do I become every new environment I walked into? Okay, I'll just become like them. Um, whether it was like my old church culture, or if, I remember if I, one group of friends, they were like the nerds. So I'm like, okay, well, let me become like the nerds. Another group of friends were like the artist. Okay, how do I become like the artist? So every environment, every new environment and new group of people that I came across, I just morphed into them. I just became a
Mm.
chameleon to survive, because that's what I had internalized as a kid as my survival,
Wow.
as my, my means of my sense of self-worth,
Mm.
how I justified life. and and that was my way of protecting myself, so that the big bad guy up in the sky wouldn't come down and discipline me and hurt me and harm me, and you know what I mean. So it just it became an act for me. My
Mm.
life became an act. I was almost outside of myself, viewing myself as many different people.
So then we when we think about that, and again, I'm just kind of reading from a youth perspective, being a youth myself, and coming up into that. I never had the tight environment like you did. But we grew up with the Christian principle, but we didn't have the eyes and ears everywhere looking, and have to be B and B, because we grew up in Jamaica where we had a lot more loose time to do things. But I'm thinking with what you're saying, sometimes like a being a shell of Nicole. There's an external Nicole and there's an internal Nicole.
Right.
I try to be me on the inside, but I have to be them on the outside.
Yes.
Yeah, and
That's really good.
and,
Yeah.
and and that must be a real struggle. So I'm trying to journey with you to see how do you, because everybody's story, somebody can relate to your story. Now you're still very young, so tell me about how weighty was that struggle to say. And by the way, did Nicole do any little thing in the corner that nobody would know, that say, I'm doing this for Nicole, but when I get out of this little circle, I'm gonna do it this for them? Tell me about those challenges and struggles, battles that you have to emotionally, psychologically fight your way through.
Well, that's the thing. When you start to take on another form of, like, almost like a counterfeit version, you are wearing many masks. So your facade becomes your reality. You start to think, "Oh, this is who I am." Because you're playing the part so well, you're getting applause from the audience,
Mm-hmm.
because you are presenting the external cues and results that people want, that humans want, and are asking of you and requiring of you, and you're fulfilling it, you think you're great, you think you're good. And so I believe that I just kind of cruised along in life, always under the radar, always knowing like slightly inside like something is off. And I remember always asking like, who am I? Who am I really?
Mm,
I was always on this like quest for like identity and purpose and like,
mhm.
who is this person? But because the stronghold of this counterfeit version of myself that I had created, that I had to uphold so tightly, was the priority, and it was what I held so fast to. I couldn't crack under the pressure. I couldn't not be this
Wow.
these masks for years. And so I just I became an A-list actor. Truth be told, I did. I became an A-list actor at being someone else. And so anything, I feel Holy Spirit. Anything, man, I feel God. Sorry. I feel Holy Spirit touch on. Anything that threatened the thought and idea of me having to let go of this persona that I had taken on was like a threat. And at all cost, I was like, you have to get out of my way. You must leave. You must, you know what I mean? So I would just so even in my old church, I took on the persona of my old church, the culture of it. So it wasn't even so much I'm taking on God. I was
Mm,
taking on the culture and the religion, and
wow.
I literally I studied it. Again, I didn't know this was happening in the moment, but I had just morphed and turned into this disciple, so to speak, which the technical term
Mhm,
is
mhm,
learner, student.
mhm,
I
mhm,
became a student of whatever environment I inhabited. So, I was in my old church half my life. So I studied, okay, what does it mean to, the people who are accepted? Oh, leaders. Okay. So what are the leaders doing? Oh, the leaders are doing this to climb the spiritual ladder, to build their spiritual resume. They're, evangelizing and passing out these amount of tracts and, cards and church cards. And so I literally became that externally. So anything that came in the way of threatening what I had built up, my spiritual resume that I built up, I literally would just lash out, honestly, because I would, in the Bible, it talks about like they built the Tower of Babel,
mhm,
and they had built up this whole um, strong tower, this up into, to the sky.
mhm, mhm.
And they were like, nothing can stop us now. That's what they said. And God's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to come down and confuse their language, because they literally they'll take over.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened to me, is that I started taking over this new life that wasn't really my life. It was
Mhm.
this version of something else that I had created. And I was so staunch and adamant about protecting this false identity.
Wow. So it became like an assignment. That's a good word. Like an assignment that I must not break this. I have to keep this. Now, at what point, because you say no, you've gone off to college, right? You've gone off to college. We get into the college, we get out of the cluster of the environment where eyes and ears are everywhere. Now you're in an environment where the average person don't know you.
Right.
All right, you're not, nobody's seeing you going and coming that say, oh, hey, calling on you, because the environment is completely different. The behavior of everybody else is a little bit different, because normally children go into college and it's like, finally I get a little break, and some children get, break out because the environment is changed, and they just get from being like a hostage to a freelancer, like, okay. Okay, so what was it like for you now getting into college? The environment change. Did a little bit more of the real Nicole came out, or Nicole still retain what she was assigned to, or what she made herself to be, Did she carry that along in and through college, or at some point there's a little bit of freedom, take a breath?
Well, I realized that once I got to college, like all of the external barriers that had kept this false identity together, it slowly started unraveling because I didn't have the same external structure around me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went from being top of my class, um, top 10%, honor roll student, achieving, making A's because that was what was expected of me, right? To coming into my freshman year of college and getting like my first D in
Oh,
life because
wow.
I wouldn't go to class, and you know what I mean? I just kind of became loose, or what you said, freelancer. And I had no sense of like self understanding. Like everything that I had built up was now starting to be poked at. And so again, if your internal world, like they say, like the first 7 years, the first formative years of your life is where um who you're going to be, it's kind of like imprinted in you, right? And so what was already in me to hold on to this false sense of self internally, it was very much so still a stronghold in me, but my external world started to reveal, oh, there's holes in your system, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I remember when I first told my dad, I was terrified to tell him, like, Dad, I got my first, and he was like, he disciplined me, and I wasn't even under his household anymore. And I remember I went right back into that default of like, okay, get it back together. You must be strong, the whole nine. And I remember I lost my scholarship for a semester. And so I just figured a way to like try to put my life back together. And I regained my scholarship. But again, it was all external. It was still an external motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Although my
Mm-hmm.
dad is not physically present, his voice is still in my head. And so I got to do this for him still. I got to,
Mm-hmm.
that was my
Mm-hmm.
whole motivation growing up in my whole life was I must please my parents. I must make sure they're happy about my actions. And so on one hand, I'm being unraveled slowly but surely, like me. But on the other hand, the strong, uh, my own strength was still trying to hold on to what I had built, and so I couldn't crack under the pressure, and so I was still externally trying to like patch things up together with them by the motivation of my parents.
So the tug of war continued. The
Continued.
tug of war continued. Whew, the Apostle Paul talk. I find a law warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity. Oh wretched man that I am. So,
Yep.
so I'm struggling with this. Who shall deliver me from the body of this death? Is the cry of the apostle. All right. So how did you eventually break out or break down?
Mm, that's such a great question. I do think that it had to happen over a period of time through several humbling events. But I will say, accelerating it to present day, or not present day, but up until the last 2 years of starting my wilderness journey, where that's when the true breakdown occurred. And some of this I do speak about in my book. But basically, everything I had tried to build up with the palm of my own hands was now being completely ripped from me, literally like pulled underneath me. And I had to, so in my book, I call it, every chapter is a different B. So I
Mhm.
had to go through the 9 stages of being in order to completely let go of this falsified, counterfeit version of myself that I had created for the world to see. She had to now be broken down, disintegrate, be completely stripped and humbled. That's the first chapter. It's called Be Stripped. And so I lost everything, Dr. Orville. I lost everything in my external. environment, from job to finances. I mean, to everything
we,
that I,
we, we, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that because now the highs and the lows, right? We're gonna get to that. How did that happen, and how did you lift yourself up? But we're gonna get there, my friends. I'm talking to Nicole Plummer, and she has a book that is called "Begin to Be," and you give a little synopsis of what some of what we'll find in the book, and the book is to be released, right? It's still not.
yeah, it's, you can go to my website, begintobemovement.com, where you can put in your pre-order. You can get your
Okay.
pre-order copy of the book today.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna get there where we're gonna talk, type in the website, etc., and stuff like that, so you can pursue. But I'm talking to a young lady, a young, intelligent lady, as you can hear, very intelligent, and were brought up almost under the restriction of the godly father and the intelligent uh academically astute parent, and they were wanting them to push them even further than themselves, and so the pressure intensified. As I think about this right now, I'm thinking about the double pressure, because I never thought of that,
Yes,
until now. This is a double pressure.
yes,
There's pressure to maintain the Christian values, and there is pressure to excel academically.
right.
So dragging those two baggages, and with Nicole in the middle,
Yes.
I'm thinking, which one was weightier?
Whew. Man, this is getting good, Dr. Orville. Wow. I never really broke that dichotomy down until you just articulated that it was the intellect versus the religion. And the truth of the matter, wow, this is such a good conversation. The truth of the matter is that they both plagued me simultaneously.
Wow,
I would say,
I'm underscoring that word. I'm going to underscore that word. They both plagued me. All
yeah,
right, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, it was wow, this is really deep, but I would say that after college, so even getting before I get to my 2-year wilderness journey, um I found myself on this hamster wheel, this cycle of feeling like something's pulling and tugging at me, but never knowing what it is. Now I know that I've been called by God, but back then I didn't know what that even meant, what that even looked like, because I grew up in a house of, my parents are scholars and, in and of themselves. And so they very much so pushed education, like I said. So the idea of ministry was never that wasn't even on the table. Like I
Mhm.
said, my dad's role in the church was more so like administratively. He was right hand to the priest, but he did more of like the organization of the church
Mhm. Mhm.
structure.
Mhm.
And so I after college, they always say that if you're called by God for maybe one of the fivefold ministry roles, one of the signs is that your life starts to fall apart. Like you don't know why things are not working out for you. So Dr. Orville, I was trying to fulfill the family structure. I started out nursing school. I was trying to like find my way academically time and time again, and it would just all slip through the cracks. And I remember I would always just feel like I feel like such a failure. I feel like I can't attain educationally like the way that I once was before college. And I was like, what's wrong with me? So that was one thing. And then the other thing is that I was in my old church that I was in, and not the church I grew up in with my parents, but the church I found in college. I was in that church for a while, and I kept trying to again climb the leadership ladder, because I'm like, I have to prove and show that I'm spiritual enough and I have enough Bible knowledge and all of these things, but even that started like slipping through my fingers. And so simultaneously, the religious aspect of things and the educational aspect of things, I found myself that I couldn't keep a job. I couldn't hold a job. I would literally bounce from like a job to job, one and it was never anything on the track that my parents put me on, which were like maybe, like you said, upper echelon, white collar, higher paying jobs. It was these, I end up finding myself in just lower paying jobs or whatever. And at the time, I my pride was still trying to like hold the facade together, keep myself intact religiously and educationally. But in actuality, it was all falling apart slowly but surely. And that was God knocking on the door of my heart, trying to get my attention every time to say, your plan is not working. If you will just let go of this lie that you've created for your life, I have a better plan over here for you. But I could not let go. I mean, I was clutching it, like by the grip of death almost. Like I could not let go of who I was determined that I was supposed to be, according to my family religious structure and my family educational structure. Like I couldn't let that die. Culture has can have such a huge um impact on us and
Mhm.
stronghold over us. It could be even greater than God when God is trying to call you. Um and so he was trying to tear that down. And so when I look back on those times, I realized that was the Lord trying to humble me, but my pride would just not let me let it go, although it was occurring right before my very eyes.
I'm again, my friends. I'm talking to Nicole Plummer, young lady. You hear for yourself. She's brilliant, and everybody has a story. And maybe your parents are hearing some of these things for the first time, or her family hearing some of these things that, okay, for the first time, because that's what letting your story go does. I'm curious, a little bit curious. Did you aspire to become something of your own, or were you trying to fit into the mold of your parent expectation?
um I think that I didn't know. I didn't, kind of like going back to what I said earlier, like when you take on the facade of someone, of the expectations of what others want for you, you literally start to kill who God actually created you to be. So you take on this false form and version of yourself, and you literally start to act that out as if that is you. So the reason why I held so tightly onto it for so many years is because I thought that's who I was. I thought that who my parents said I was, who education, society, who, again, whatever circle I went into, that's who I became, because I tried to fulfill all of those expectations and fulfill them with flying colors. I And because I was getting a lot of accolades, and um man was coddling. They didn't know, I didn't know, um but it was there, they were supporting um the false narrative. And
Hmm.
so the false narrative becomes the real narrative when you've been operating in it for so long. So I genuinely, sincerely thought I'm doing the right thing, but in all actuality I was way off.
At what point you felt this is not authentic? This is not the real me. I don't see myself futuristically becoming what I aspire to be in the way that I am, that things are trending. At what point Nicole took a pause and say, let me internalize this, reflect on this, come to maybe not a dead end, but a crossroad, and say, where do I go from here and how?
Great question. I would say that when I started my wilderness journey 2 years ago, everything was completely out of my control at that point, when I lost everything. And God sent my old mentor. She was the first person that really started highlighting, this is not who you are. Like, you are literally living someone else's life,
Mm.
and this is a false version of yourself. And I remember when she started speaking these truths to me, I was just so, I fought against it. And I was so offended because I had spent so many years building this life, creating this life. And even though I was suffering and struggling, and Dr. Orville, this is a good message for someone out there. Like, Corinthians talks about, when we are weak, then we are strong. That His power is made perfect in our weakness. And so, what I wasn't doing is I wasn't allowing the struggle, the trials, the weaknesses that I was going through, that He was allowing me to go through. I wasn't allowing His power to be made perfect. I wasn't learning from my trials. I wasn't learning. And that's the thing about God. He's a loving God. He's gentle. So he will allow there to be like, oh, a little bit of discipline, right? And then he'll up the discipline. Okay, maybe a medium amount of discipline. Okay, she's still not getting it. Okay, because things were happening to me along the way, but my pride, again, at least in my family, in my, the Jamaican pride, like we run things no run we. Like, I couldn't let go of that.
Oh wow, that's a real Jamaican term. Good one.
Yeah,
You got a
like
good one right there.
I couldn't let my external world was crumbling around me, but I couldn't acknowledge the suffering that I was going through because I kept trying to hold on to what was left, the scraps, the semblance of just like I was barely making it financially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was barely making it, but I could not let go until this mentor came into my life, and God used her to radically wreck me and change me at that point.
Again, my friends, I'm talking to this young lady, Nicole Plummer, and I'm fascinated with her story, and trying to relate to her journey and have an understanding of the struggle, sometimes the parental struggle that we put on our children, because we want them to be something that we perceive and we think would make us look good. And sometimes we pressure our children to do what we want them to do, what we think they should do. And sometimes we help to create the struggle for the children because we're not tapping into their aspiration to help them to propel them to come to accomplish their own dream. We dream for them and want them to walk in the dream, and sometimes some of them fall apart and never get back up
Right.
because of the facade, as you say, and trying to create this robotic version of something that fits into the mold of what others want me to be. And eventually you find that you don't have the what it takes to make that happen, uh, at the level of expectation. So I'm still curious about how many years did you struggle? By the way, before we get to that, how did your parents respond? Were you in regular communication with your parents? Were you back home? What were they saying to you, near or far? The rebuke, the admonishment, the whatever. How did they deal with their brilliant daughter that they have watched all these years uniquely developing into exactly what we want, and then all of a sudden, Nicole, what happened?
Yeah, no, that is a great question because my parents, I think they were just on the sidelines, just scratching their noggin,
Just
like
can't believe it.
they're just in utter shock and belief that we've sent our children. My brother went to private school his whole life. We've given them everything. We didn't want them to work so they can focus on their studies. They gave us everything they had. I mean, they did their best. And the best wasn't, and when I speak of my parents, I love them. I don't speak any I don't speak down on them. They're amazing people, but we give what we have, and all they had to give at that time was what they had structurally. I as I come into my own now, into the thick of my story, I'm realizing this pace that I was running, this search that I was on, was really for love. I was hungering
Mm,
and
mm,
longing for this deep well of love, the living
mm,
water that
mm,
will never run dry. I didn't know that's what I was missing. I did not know that that's what I was thirsting after. And so, um, my parents are just scratching their head. They're trying everything. When I'm struggling financially, they're trying to like send me money in my bank account. They're trying to lift me up and help me to, they're encouraging me like, okay, well, just do this or do that. Well, your mom's a nurse, just be a nurse, or just trying to like figure something out. But I kept this, again, going back to something was pulling me. And so everything I tried just wouldn't work. Everything I tried wouldn't work. And I didn't know what that something was, but I, I soon realized in my wilderness that something was a someone, and his name was Jesus Christ.
mm. So what was your relationship with God then? And maybe it's a good question. At what point did you realize most, if not all, of what you were doing was acting something and trying to become something or trying to do
Right,
something? At what point did Nicole said, this is more than an act. I need a relationship.
right.
When did that happen and what triggered that? Is I need more than the act of fulfilling these things. I think something is tugging at my heart and I'm finding the missing piece, that I am lacking a real intimate relationship. And when did that happen and what were your next step? And we're coming up to the wilderness thing, because it seems like that is the prime time or the highlight of your life.
Yeah, and I will just say, to accelerate to that, because that's really when it all hit me, was during the wilderness. I have this mentor here just in my ear, constantly pointing out, you're being fake here. This is you have a pharisaical spirit. Like, this is all religion. Like, you've built this by the palm of the sweat of your own brow, the palm of your own hands. This is not God. This is all just rules and guidelines and works. And you're in the wrong. You're
Mm,
actually wrong. What you've built up, this Tower of Babel, you think it's right, but you're missing the mark. That's the technical definition of sin. It's to mean to miss the mark.
mhm, mhm.
And so I had everything I had built up had to be taken from me, Dr. Orville. The things that I prided myself in. I prided myself in wanting to have a certain job, money, status, um, uh, everything. It all got removed. It all literally vanished at once.
Wow.
And so when I lost it all, is when, and I couldn't deny that it was the hand of God over me. But I fought tooth and nail, because Jamaicans, we have that pride, we have that spirit of like, I can't give up. But that was the time where I had to give up. I
Mm,
had nothing left but the rock at the bottom, and that rock was Jesus Christ. When I hit rock bottom, I found the true rock of Jesus Christ at the bottom.
wow.
And that's all I had to stand on at that point, was him. I had nothing to my name, Dr. Orville. Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. Literally nothing.
Wow.
And that's when the aha moment, the light bulb went off, and I was forced to relinquish control. I was forced to wave the white flag, and I was forced to say, God, help me. I need you. I need Jesus. I don't really know Jesus. I actually don't have a relationship with him. I've been operating in religion and works this whole time, and I don't know you, the real, true, living God. And I need a true relationship with you. Who are you?
Wow. Wow. I'm thinking, yeah, and it doesn't sound like a life of horror to some people, because being hit here and dragged there and being abused there, physically and verbally abused. Some people can't consider that to be like a life of horror. But I am listening, and I'm hearing a life of horror, because and this is a life of internal horror that the other man can see and understand, but when you're ripped apart from inside, because of all these internal, is
Yes.
like is like bleeding on the inside.
Yes, Dr. Orville. Sorry, continue.
It's like bleeding on the inside, dying slowly, and
Yes,
nobody's coming to your rescue because nobody's seeing that you're bleeding. Internal bleeding, dying slowly. I'm curious. I'm curious, and I'm curious to see again, because all of what I'm listening for in your conversation, beautiful young lady, intelligent young lady, uh, great family background dynamics, and all of those things. But I see a young lady caught in the middle. And one of my book that I'm writing, my next book after this one, is entitled "Caught in the Middle." That's my title for my book after
good.
this one, "Caught in the Middle." And the one that I'm writing now is "Don't Judge Me by My Scars or Hold Me Hostage to My Past." That
Mhm.
that one, hopefully, I release that in February. But I'm seeing a young lady. I'm listening to you now with the mentor. The mentor comes back into your ear, right? And the mentor is saying, Nicole, you are not real. You are fake. This is a facade.
Yeah.
You're trying to create something you are not. And you're hearing that in your ear, and you're trying to balance that with what you have been taught and brought up. Here is another struggle. Now, this is not a childhood struggle. This is a young adult struggle now,
Yes.
right? A young adult struggle, which this is a real struggle, because now I am getting to understand life,
Right.
and I'm hearing everything that you've been building here is no use, no good. That's not you. So you're going to have to make a dramatic shift.
Yes.
To
Yes.
me, that is heavy,
Yes.
heavy to deal with. Now,
Yes.
how did Nicole step out? How did Nicole go left or right from being caught in the middle of these two things? The to be
Right.
and have been.
Right. Um, it's wow, so good. You're really highlighting, pinpointing amazing points here. I first want to start off by saying that people assume if you've, and this goes back to the start of this interview, that if you've been given everything, if you grew up
Mhm.
stable, if you grew up middle class, white picket fence, and you have the American dream and money and status, that your life is going to be perfect and you're going to be on this path, this trajectory of Pleasantville. And that was not my story. That's what I was given, but that's not what was produced. And
Wow.
so you can experience that inner horror, as you call it, that inner turmoil, just from creating a life that's not honest, real, and authentic, and just by internalizing lies of the enemy, which is what happened to me. And I do believe there was, there's bloodline, now that I'm aware now of those things, bloodline, heritage things, and um, generational things, right? That are sometimes knowing and unknowingly that you're operating in. Um, but don't judge a book by its cover. And that abuse, like, because it could be the flip side. Someone could come from an extremely abusive background
Mhm.
and then be wildly successful.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's like you never know how someone's life is going to end up. And so there are no guarantees. The only guarantee we have is Jesus Christ, and that's what I've had to learn in my own life. And so so to go back to answer your question about how did I get from um in what decision did I make coming from this middle, now that being an adult and understanding that I have a free will choice, hearing the truth of my mentor, but battling the lies of my past.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, um, I think everything, God will not, um, he's not going to, I mean, he did it with Paul. He said, you cannot buck up against the goads when he was blinded on the road of
Right.
Damascus. And I feel like that's what was kind of happening to me at that moment. I could no longer buck against the goads, which is like a sharp prick,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, poking you. And so I could no longer ignore. That's what the truth of my mentor's voice was, leading me in the direction of God, was just that goad. And I could no longer ignore it, fight against it. And I started to realize that this internal struggle and battle, I needed deliverance. I needed a lot of inner healing. I needed
Wow.
um, just a new path, plan, life, and story. Really, I had to start from scratch. I needed a clean slate. I needed I had to start over, and so I had to completely unlearn everything that I had built up, based on the lies, the identity that I built on lies, the false identity. Had to be demolished, which it was by losing everything externally. But now I had to unlearn everything internally.
So
Because you
now you can, now you can borrow the Apostle Paul's word. The things that were gained to me, I count them but loss. I count them but dung, that I may win Christ. Right? Okay.
Yes, yes, that part. Like
Yeah.
you hit it on the nail.
Wow.
You literally hit it on the nail. Like I it was no longer the Nicole show. It was no longer about me. It was no longer about, the empire, spiritual and intellectual empire that I tried to build that failed me, or cultural empire that I tried to build. It all had to be about this man, Jesus, and the new path that he had for me, the new plan that he had for me, and getting in alignment with that, with his will, and just even learning and figuring out how to do that, and what does that mean, and what does that even look like. But that first required me losing everything to be humbled, to see that I'm not in control. Two, it came with a choice of, okay, I'm hearing truth. Am I going to choose to hold on to truth above the lies of my past? Because I could have still continued on down the my path. We all have, again, that free will choice. But it would have, brokenness begets brokenness, trauma begets trauma, lies beget lies. And so I would have continued on in that cycle. And I knew that after so much time, I just was done. I was done with it. I could no longer uphold the facade anymore.
Wow.
So the third thing after that was getting the healing and deliverance that I needed, which I did in my current ministry right now, Rest Ministries. And, from that point on, I was able to just allow, I was in the wilderness. God had me in the
What
wilderness.
what 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 led you, pushed you, or dragged you into into
Good
ministry?
word.
Oh, yeah. What led you, pushed you, or dragged you into into the ministry, the beginning of what you consider to be a ministry?
Right. Um, so it occurred actually this year, the beginning of this year. Um, I
Okay, so that is an offset of your begin to be.
Yeah, begin to
So
be.
we gotta get back to the begin to be before we get to where the ministry will, because you spent 2 years in the wilderness, as you say,
Yeah.
and then in the last year, something else happened. So we're gonna come back to talk about some of those. So we're gonna talk about what inspired begin to be, right? So that's where we're gonna go when we come back, my friends. I'm talking to Nicole Plummer. Fascinating story. It doesn't sound like somebody being abused with black eyes and somebody knocked them down, and but my friends, I this conversation is having a
Yes.
heavy weight on my mind, just trying to journey with her. And I hope that you're picking up like me. When we come back, we're going to find out, okay, the transition happened. She moved from ordinary places to now into a wilderness with the Lord.
Yeah.
2 years of wilderness where God began to shape or reshape her
Mm.
life. And when we come back, we're gonna find out what's that. So I'm gonna give her a chance to get a drink of water and give you a chance to hear something on some of my promos. So when we come back, we're gonna continue the conversation with Nicole. Stay right there, my friends.
Every Wednesday, 8 p.m., join ORV Ministries on Let's Talk with the Doc, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. There is a story, something to encourage and inspire you. You may even have a life-changing experience. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. Stay connected. Subscribe to ORV Ministries YouTube channel. Follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
This is the book they've been talking about. The 7 churches of Asia Minor, or the 7 churches in Revelation. If you want to know about the letters that Jesus sent to these churches, you gotta get yourself a copy of this book. Scan the QR code to get an ebook or a paperback, and then you can find out a lot more about these churches and the letters Jesus sent to them.
ORB Ministries presents Truth Matters. Join the Truth Matters panel for discussion on issues of the times with host Dr. Orville Beckford Sr. and his panel consisting of Bishop Ishmael Charles, Reverend Joycelyn Barnett, Minister Ava Samuels, Minister Kevin Johnson, Dr. Danette Ming, Bishop Anthony Campbell, and Pastor Shelley Antoni. Nothing is off limits for discussion. Follow ORB Ministries on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And be ready for the next hot topic on Truth Matters.
What's your story? Everyone has a story. Do you want to tell yours? Stories are inspirational and unique. Maybe God wants to use your story as a life changer for someone. But that will never happen unless you share your story. Not only that it could be a life changer for somebody, but it could change your life as well as you release yourself. Let it go and inspire someone. That will not happen unless you share it. Remember, your light can't shine covered under a bushel. Do you want to share your story? Email orbministries@gmail.com and let's talk with the doc. Only heaven will record the impact you might have and the lives you will change as you share. Maybe that's a ministry God has given you to be a source of inspiration, a testimony of God's goodness and how you made it. Are you ready? Let's do it. All right, so we are back. We are back with Nicole. Incredible young lady, incredible story. Incredible story, incredible story. There is so much for both children and parents to learn from this story, because sometimes our parents, and I'm talking to parents who have children and might have children, sometimes we want to make our children into something that we think they should be, and sometimes we put them under unnecessary emotional, psychological, mental struggle trying to become what we want them to be, and sometimes that's not what their lives are designed to be, and we turn their lives into a young life of horror because we want to shape them in what we want, and they never become it. And so a lot of their lives sometimes become wasted. A lot of their lives become wasted because they are not really pursuing with enthusiasm and zeal and aspiration to accomplish something. They're just trying to please us, and we waste some of our children's lives. Let us better have a conversation with our children, try to find out what they aspire, what they want to become, and help them to become that. I think if we can learn that method, we can be more of a source of inspiration to our children than being a bag of pressure. All right,
And
here we are. So tell me now, my sister, about this leading into this wilderness. John the Baptist, the voice, one crying into the wilderness somewhere. How did that happen? What triggered that? How did it start? What convinced you that this is what my next step is going to be? And where did it tell you you're gonna go by virtue of that?
so I would say that the first year of the wilderness was the stripping of everything externally, right? But then the second half of the wilderness, the last year, this past year, um, was so the first year.
Amen. There's a confession right here online here. Here's a mama saying, I'm guilty. Thank
Um,
God. So many parents are guilty.
I
Yeah.
know. And I just want to encourage parents. God loves you. There is the grace of God, covers a multitude of sin. God's heart is that we all just learn. We all just learn, how can we grow? How can we do it God's way? How can we become better at stewarding our children? Because it is they are our precious commodities, most precious commodities to God. So you are loved.
That's a good word, stewarding. I never heard it. I never heard stewardship put into that kind of perspective, but that's a really good word. In stewarding, that's really uniquely said in that perspective.
Yeah, it really is, because, the Bible says, train a child in the way they should go and they will not depart from it. So that's a sense of stewarding the direction and path that your child will go on. A parent is given that jurisdiction by God to do so. And so God is entrusting the parents to know, okay, how do I, mold this young person's life and path? But it has to be done according to God's plan for that child and not necessarily your plan for that child. And that does require you praying on behalf of that child and asking God, what does this particular child need? Because every child needs something different. There's no
and,
cookie
and,
cutter.
and also not be afraid to have a conversation with the
Right.
child. Sometimes, and what we are guilty of as old time parent, as old time parent, we don't have conversation with our children to find out where their thoughts are,
Right.
what they aspire, how do they see their lives, step by step, and maybe help them to get another perspective or to guide them step by step. That's, I think, where the stewardship come in, is not to tell me what to do, but find out something, reason with me, because what we have lacked in our lives is the ability to reason with our children.
Yes.
We don't think children meet the criteria of reasoning with the parent. We think the children, we tell them what to do. And sometimes they hang in there until they can't wait to get to the point where they can not listen to what you want to tell them. And now you, who thought you were all the help they need, they realize that they don't want no more help from you because you don't have a voice of reason. I'm sorry to be venting down the street like that, but I thought I want to drop that in because we need to help our parents to grow with our children,
Yes.
and get them have an input.
Yeah.
their lives and future, so you can guide them from experience and etc etc. I'm sorry, my dear, but I'm with you on this. So tell me, because before you get to the wilderness, it's like the prodigal son. The Bible said he came to himself.
Yes. Yes.
Give me a came to myself moment, that said I must do something different.
Yeah, that happened. I would say at the beginning of this year when the Lord allowed me to part ways with my mentor. So, the person who was the voice of reason, investing so much love, the love of the Lord into my life like I've never experienced before, we now had to part ways. And so that really it rocked my world in a lot of ways, because that the love and connection that I have always been looking for, God sent this earthly example to me that I now got to experience, but then now it was taken. And so I responded in a way where I was just like, God, what do I do now? And so God was like, he's like, I allowed you to have that mentor so that she can usher you to me, to my presence, to my heart, to my love. But in the midst of that, it was like almost like a violent reaction, because again, this whole time I've been searching for love, and I'm receiving this love, this like almost like maternal type of love, and it's removed. And now I'm angry. I'm like, God, why would you remove the one person that was helping me? And he didn't want her to become a crutch. He didn't want me to have this dependency upon her, because he now wanted to be my father. He wanted to be my leader, my mentor, my teacher, all of the roles that I was, once looking to this person, he now wanted to be that for me. And so I came to completely to the end of myself, the end of my rope, the end of all of my physical earthly teachers. And so all I had was him now, literally in the wilderness. I no longer had a guide. I no longer had my Samuel, my Eli, who was for Samuel,
Mm-hmm.
or my Elijah for my Elisha.
Elisha.
You know, I no longer had this mentor, this covering. It was just God and I just was like, oh my gosh, what do I do from here? But then he sent the current ministry I'm a part of. And so to see that I had such a violent reaction to parting from this mentorship, it showed just deficits, emotional deficits in my own heart,
Mm,
that and
mm,
voids that
mm,
were really the root. The reason why he started unraveling me from the outside in, is because he had to get into my heart to show me that this was the driving force of all of my actions for all these years that have created the terror and the horror and the oppression and the torment, was these voids in your own heart that you now need healing from me, directly from me. And so I got deliverance through my ministry. I started learning how to this I really started the begin to be process in my own personal life, where he started showing me how to some of the chapters of my book. So every chapter of my book is a different be. So be stripped is the first chapter. Or sorry, be humbled is first chapter. Be stripped. Then it goes to be naked, then be vulnerable. So this was the starting of the process of me being vulnerable with the Lord, being naked before him, just bearing my heart, crying out, expressing my need, clinging to him, learning how to hear his voice, learning how to allow him to meet my needs, and to stop running to all of these other external avenues to fill the voids. It was now about his love. His love was now the motivating force to drive me into meeting these broken parts of my heart that I didn't even know existed.
mm.
But it all
Wow.
but it explained the last several years of my life and what I just went through. I'm like, oh, I needed quiet. Another chapter is be still. I had to be still enough to even recognize what was going on inside of me. it was so much noise going on around me up into that, before the wilderness period, that I couldn't even hear him. I couldn't see straight. I couldn't focus. I couldn't identify what was going wrong in order to get on the right path to go to do what was right. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I went through a 9-month journey. The number 9 biblically means um, the divine fulfillment of God's promises. It's also the number of birthing. So each month of the 9 months this past year is what finally came to a head to birth begin to be. He showed me that everything you've walked through, I've now prepared you to birth this movement and to now help others to learn how to begin to be with me, to go through the 9 stages of beginning with the Lord. And that does come through a, a humbling, a crushing experience, a stripping, a removing, uh, a nakedness where it's literally just you standing before the living God and giving an account for your life and where you are, so he can mold you like on the potter's wheel and use you into the instrument of honor that he wants you to be.
My friends, I'm talking to Nicole Plummer again. You hear the story on the journey. Um, I I'm still a little curious about the okay. You talk about the letting go of, you didn't want this mentor to be a crutch to be holding on to for survival. You have to you were terrified when you had to let go of that. Um, were you working or not working, high level job or low level job or no job? You know, that empty what? Where were you at that point in your life, other than the and I hear you talk about the emotional deficit. That's a very strong statement.
Yeah.
Emotional deficit. I mean, I don't know how well we are able to define or to relate to things like those, because sometimes we don't show ownership to things like those. Sometimes we are in denial
Right.
of those realities. but
Right.
but to hear you say that now, an emotional deficit, that's a very strong statement. You know, an emotional deficit, to me, in my understanding or looking into that, almost like a programmed robot, like a programmed robot. Yeah, I'm doing it, but I'm not emotionally attached to it. It's not bringing out the best of me. I am not really internally emotionally connected to something. Something is over here and I am over here. I am just kind of going on, being plugged in, and my button is turned on, and I'm just in the performance stage, the acting, and not emotionally connected. It's like people who are not emotionally connected to the children can't really relate to them. They cannot give them things, give them a Game Boy, I give them an iPad, I give them a phone and say, go find some game and play, because they can give them, but they're not emotionally connected. So then emotional deficit with connecting with your children. So were you emotionally in deficit from connected to your own life's reality? Help me to grasp a little bit more, because that's a very strong statement.
Yeah, no, you you are pinpointing um every phase of this process. So basically, when I left my old mentor, I was in California, and God brought me back to my roots, my origin. Uh, the emotional deficit, lack of connection was, he brought me back to my parents' home. He brought me back to my childhood bedroom,
Wow.
and I now had to basically start the developmental process again emotionally by learn in my adulthood what I had misinterpreted, internalized. The enemy had come
Wow.
in and caused lies. Now had to be reformed. Uh, so it's even now. I'm now making connections as I verbalize this to you, that 9-month birthing process. He had to put me back into the womb of my origin, in my childhood bedroom, in my parents' home, where I now had to start reconnecting with them again.
Wow.
He started revealing things from my bloodline, generational curses, things that affected me in my childhood that I wasn't even aware of, certain family dynamics, that why it affected this decision that led to that decision. He had to bring me back into the belly of his womb, uh in the spirit realm, but in the natural realm, it was the origins in the belly of my childhood. He had to bring me back to where it all started, to correct, reconstruct, heal, mend, have the conversations with my parents, uh go there emotionally and psychologically with them. Like I said, go through healing, go through deliverance. I mean, he always, when God is trying to do a new thing and there's been disconnection, he will always bring you back to the inception of a thing, the induction of a thing, the origins, because that's the only way you can now build on a solid foundation, to build his tower, his building, as Jesus is the cornerstone. He had to decimate my old life, and he now had to rebuild me on a whole new slab of foundation that he planted for me. So this was not only a whole restructuring of my life, but now my parents are now being brought into what I'm going through. And so to go back to the original point you made about parents, and um not, and showing our parents grace, that I had to realize my parents are human. My parents didn't have certain emotional, um the EQ, certain emotional um um prowesses in order to instill in me. And so it revealed, and so he had me um in different family dynamics, whether it be my immediate family dynamic or with extended. And he started just giving me revelations on, this is where it all, God is a generational God. He's a legacy building God. So when he's trying to do a new thing with you, it will start with you, but it's going to eventually affect the whole family. That's his heart, and that's his plan of redemption. So that's what I went through.
I'm listening to you, and I'm looking at the prodigal.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of the dynamics of the prodigal, the journey, the return,
Yes.
I am curious about how did that affect Nicole's pride.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, how did that affect Nicole's pride?
Yes.
To be brought, and I'm gonna call it brought down.
Yes.
Your parents might not think it's being brought down, but to come back into your childhood bedroom
Yes.
from the West Coast,
Yes.
back into the East Coast of Florida,
Yeah.
and to go back into your childhood bedroom. I don't have my own place. I'm not climbing the ladder of success. Oh my God. What were tell me the emotional weight,
Whew.
the psychological pressure that brought on you, and for you to get to that point of packing up and coming back to the East Coast, that must have taken a lot of contemplation, and seeing, is there an alternative? Uh, do you really have to do this? Are you sure you can deal with the aftermath of this? I'm just trying to put a package on this. Help me to journey with you in that moment, or those
Oh,
moments.
yeah. I wrestled. I fought. I almost didn't go. it was a new stake in the coffin to my pride, the heart of my pride.
Yeah, my God.
Oh, deeply. And then again, coming from such accomplished parents who have such high standards, and they're witnessing their child
And poured so much into you.
poured so much into me.
Wow.
And this very much so is a prodigal story, like very much so like a modern day prodigal story, because
It is,
yeah,
prodigal. What my brother's gonna say? What all of those contemplations. Like the
yeah,
prodigal was the bigger brother. I said the bigger brother was the one home to for the prodigal. So this is all prodigal stuff. But let me not put words into your mouth. Tell us your story.
yeah. And the thing with the prodigal son is that when he came to his senses, he had to humble himself. He
Yeah.
had to say, in my father's house, the
Hmm.
hired men are eating better than I.
Yeah. Exactly.
He had
Wow.
to come to that acceptance and that choice that what I received from the origin, all that my parents invested in me. And that's why when you train a child in the way they should go, they will not stray. So even if they do stray for a period of time, they always come back to what was initially instilled. And so even now, like birthing the book and everything, God is bringing me back to these origins of ambition, but it's done healthily now, because I got to reconnect back to that. I had to humble myself like the prodigal son, go back to my father's house, admit my wrong, apologize,
Wow.
say I'm sorry for squandering the inheritance you gave
Wow.
me.
Wow.
And because I had built such a false counterfeit understanding of who I thought I should have been or was supposed to be, and I squandered just everything you invested, and I had to literally bow out and say, "Mom, Dad, I forgive me."
Wow.
And naturally, of course, they received me back in.
Wow.
But yes, I had to humble low
Wow.
to that point, and it's now that I'm seeing God. Hallelujah. Whew, man, makes me emotional thinking about it. I now see God restoring my calf, my party, the royal robes, my ring.
Wow.
Because I had to humble myself. You know what I mean, Dr. Orville? I had to.
Wow.
I had to be built on the right foundation this time around. I had to, for God to get the glory in my life.
Had to be broken down to be built up.
Yep. Yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. That is incredible. I'm just thinking humanly, right?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking humanly.
Yeah.
Not as no angelic being, not as no
Perfect.
Superman, just
Perfect.
human.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of breaking and surrendering and submitting of pride for survival.
Yes.
My good Lord. My good Lord. This is an incredible story. I mean, it doesn't sound like, ladies being beaten by a husband and thrown out of their house and all of that stuff, because sometimes that's what we call incredible story. This is an incredible story. All right. So you're back home. Parents welcome you because they love and appreciate you. Disappointed, they're disappointed. And if they were like some parents, they don't want you coming because they don't have nothing more for spend on you because you waste all of them whatever already. And so I know the Jamaican culture and
Yeah.
what some parents would do and say,
Oh yeah.
right? And they would say, if you were listening, if you were following, all of the hindsight and all of the stuff, to make you feel bad kind of approach to it,
Right.
to break you down into even lower level of humility. That
Right.
now you better stretch your hand and ask what you may receive. I'm just thinking about that. I don't know the whole settings, but I'm just thinking on from the human standpoint. Um, okay, so here you are now back home. Where did Nicole go after that?
So I ended up I had to go I ended up having a little bit of health challenges, so it actually really worked itself out in terms of just having my parents support, having to depend on them in that way. But eventually I got better. And so from that point on, that's when, I'm there, I'm looking for jobs. I'm really doing what I can do to make sure that I am making the most of being grateful for what they're providing for me and what they're giving me. But again, I'm in this 9-month womb. Again, I'm not realizing I'm in this 9-month womb of development, but I'm not hearing back from jobs. I'm not, getting anything. Thank goodness I'm getting like a check in the mail from my old job. So God is providing for me, but it's still very much so humble circumstances. Not only am I in my parents' house, I'm not, getting the job that they want me to get, and
Mm-hmm.
living the type of, glamorous life they want me to live, because God is still doing a deep work in me. I'm still going through healing, deliverance. I'm going through this whole process. And so it's just a quiet journey, a quiet 9-month journey. It's God and I in my childhood bedroom, him developing me, speaking to me, cultivating, um, continuing to break things off internally as he's revealing different family dynamics that cause these issues in the first place inside of me to begin with. And so I'm just processing. And so at the end of that 9-month journey is when he revealed Begin to Be, the book.
Okay.
That's when the book came about. And that's when he was like, this is what I've been birthing in you this whole time, and this is what I want you to help others with, is to get deliverance, inner healing, and to come back into intimacy with me, because that was your journey.
So that is where the climb begins.
Yeah.
My friends, if you the book is you can are we gonna get the website? This is what the book looks like.
Yeah.
If you can see it, Begin to Be.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Begin to Be by Nicole Plummer. You can go to our website and tell us what your website is again. Let's
It's called Begin to Be Movement.com.
Begin to Be movement.
Yes. And it's a movement because the Lord has placed on my heart to go to different churches and events and even small groups and just start sharing the message of, I guess now I'm coming to this realization, other prodigals who maybe have strayed
Begin to Be
away.
movement.org.
Begin to be movement.com.
.com.
Yeah. And so to speak on this message of bringing people back to the origins of who God created them to be, really starting with God. Beginning to be is to begin with God. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God. And so in order to find your identity, find your purpose, you have to start first with God. And I was always trying to look elsewhere and everywhere else besides him. And that's why it took me years and a lot of humbling to allow myself to just be. That's the state and condition that he wants us to be in with him, so that he can add, so that he can mold, so that he can transform us into the vessels that he want, and the daughters and sons that he wants us to be. And so yeah, he's called me to share this movement. It's a book, it's a song. The song's coming out soon, and eventually I'm going to have like 30-day challenges to help people to come back into that intimacy, come back into what does it mean to spend time with God, to get still, to get quiet, to have things stripped of you and be humbled in order to come back to the Father.
So you say you are you singing?
I do sing. I'm a singer. So
You're a singer.
so the
Okay.
song that I'm coming out with, it's called Begin Again. And it's basically all about, like, I had to start my life over again. I had to
So you're
begin.
a singer, songwriter, musician, all the package together?
Yeah.
All right, all
So
right, all right.
so
All right.
so stay tuned. Keep checking the website, because that song is coming out soon for streaming. And so it's a whole package deal. Eventually I'll have an e-course coming out, a Begin to Be e-course. And so it's a whole movement. And so God has allowed.
What would the e-course, what's an e-course involve? What is that? What is that about?
So it's going to be about a six-week e-course. It's going to have video tutorial of me teaching lessons. It's going to basically be the book, but kind of a deeper dive. And along with my book, there's a workbook. Those two are available on my website for purchase right now for pre-order. But the e-course is going to pretty much expand even deeper what is inside of the book and the workbook. And so when you purchase the e-course, you'll get the book and the ebook for free along with the course. But it's just me guiding you through video tutorial, and and the workbook will be like something that you'll have practical tools and guides to learn how to go through the 9 stages of beginning to be with God.
You talked about, and we getting in the last few minutes of this conversation, which is an incredible interesting conversation. You talked about being stripped
Yes.
and being naked
Yes.
in some vocabulary.
Yes.
That's kind of synonymous, kind of.
Mhm.
But to put them separately, you must have a separate definition of. So give me your version of being stripped versus being naked. So okay, I have to be stripped to be naked, right?
Yeah.
So okay, all right. So give us your piece of, and again, I can understand. I had clothes on. I can't become naked until I am stripped. So give me the strip versus the naked. Because if you say I'm naked, it means I am stripped, right? So give me your separation of stripped and naked.
Yes, good question. It's kind of a consecutive order of events. You must be stripped first, meaning like the old parts of you, whether that be mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, even, that are not of God or has been like what you've built up for yourself that is not pleasing to God or is just not the real version of who you are. All of those things have to start to be stripped off of you, broken off of you, come off of you, uh, crushed, so to speak, going through the refiner's fire. That's what it
Mm-hmm.
means to be
Mm-hmm.
stripped.
Mm-hmm.
Is going through the heat, and when it's done God's way, you won't come out smelling like smoke, like the Hebrew boys in the book of Daniel, because God is a very gracious, covering God, but He will allow you to be humbled to the point of losing things if you're not getting the message and the lessons He's trying to teach you. It will have to get to the point of being stripped, like Joseph. Joseph literally was stripped of his coat of many colors. And so the result of that, that was God's plan for his life. The result of that was that he ended up in Potiphar's house naked, so to speak. He no longer had his dad, who he was favored by. He didn't have his coat of many colors, which was his badge of honor, that he was, the
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
the
The
youngest, the favorite
special child,
special
the
child.
special child, Rachel boy. Finally, she brought a
Right.
child into the world. Yeah.
And then on top of that, betrayal by his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So he was so the nakedness is this place of like, wow, I really have nothing but God. And Joseph, it said he had favor from the Lord. So all he had was God to speak on his behalf in front of all these prominent men. So he was naked from all he had ever known, or sorry, he was stripped of all he had never ever known, but now became naked in order to be developed and molded and used for the glory of God.
Um, a question is that position something that has been sorted out by Nicole, by looking at biblical people in the Bible, their experiences? Is that something that, so maybe this is a good question. Is that an intellectual decision or it is a spiritual wooing? Is that something that I've been dragged into this by the Spirit, or I come to this decision that I have assessed, I have evaluated, I have come to a conclusion, and I'm making an intellectual decision? Which is it, or a combination of both? Is that God is beating me on the head and say, get down there to come up? Or I'm saying, God, I think if I'm going to make it, I got to go down to come up. Do you understand my question?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's a really great question. I think it's case by case. It really depends on the plan and blueprint that God has for everyone's individual life. And then I think some other factors are like just your own stage of where you are spiritually, um, your level of obedience to God and submission to God. If you are fighting God, if you are wrestling with Him, fighting against the goads, so to speak, then it might which was my case. I was a tough cookie, God may have to bring a little bit stronger of a arsenal to kind of get you in position, get you to where He wants you to be. But if you're walking in humility is always the key. So if you're walking in humble, open-hearted, open-minded, renewed mind through the word, and you're just like, God, here am I, send me, like, use me however, mold me, make me, shape me, then it's not going to be such a tussle. And you can make a more clear-minded intellectual decision of, you know what, the Holy Spirit's leading me this direction. Let me trust, let me be obedient and just follow. That's all Jesus kept telling, the 12 disciples is follow me, I will make you fishers of men. Like that's the whole process of becoming a disciple. And so I think I think it depends on where you are spiritually and your level of submission to God, your level of humility before God, and if you have accepted the call of God on your life.
Would you consider Nicole to have been stubborn, rebellious, or naive?
All of the above. Because if you think about Joseph, he was, there's different commentary on where people, like, why he told them his dream. And some people say, oh, he was arrogant and proud.
But his brothers felt like that, I don't think the brothers felt like that, but yeah, but we understand.
Right. But then other people say, well, he was naive. He was a kid. He was a young, and he was excited. And that's what kids do.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just share openly about everything. And so I think in my situation, my combination or cocktail of sorts was a spiritual cocktail, emotional cocktail, was that due to just my internal struggles, the torment, everything, the horror, as you call it, that brokenness on top of growing up very sheltered in this middle class, stable home, having all my needs met. So that was the naivety. Then on top of that, going through, seeing God as this like big bad God in the sky. So rebelling against like, I don't want to be controlled and I don't want to be. So I think it was like a good combination of everything in one, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why my story it's unique, and it's taken time, and it's taken a lot of humbling for me to get the point. But I'm here now, and I'm grateful, and I'm learning that you don't have to go through so much in that sense. If you choose God, His plan, and humility from the start. And
Wow.
and healing. Let Him heal you if you have a past of trauma of any sort.
Wow. Whew. This is a young lady's version of a journey.
Yes.
Okay, so give us the headlines of the chapters in the book. If you can you remember them, or you have them written down? You can tell us.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the steps down? Is it 9 chapters or 9 pieces? What is it? 9. Okay.
Steps and stages.
And that is purposeful.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the first chapter is be humble. The second one is be stripped. The third one is be naked. The fourth one is be vulnerable. After that, hold on, I have them written down here. Let me grab them for you. After that, 5 is believe. Next one is be known, chapter 6. Or not chapter 6. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. Sorry, let me start over. Chapter 1, be humbled. Chapter 2, be stripped. Chapter 3, be naked. Chapter 4, be still. That's key.
Mhm.
Chapter 5, be vulnerable. Chapter 6, believe. Chapter 7, be known. Chapter 8, become. And then chapter 9, be birthed.
Okay, so what is be known?
Ooh, good question. So the angle that I wrote from in that chapter was the fact that coming from the type of family that I come from, where it's all this pressure and expectation to perform and to be great and to, do big things, that's always been kind of lingering and looming over my head, that I have to strive and succeed and, be the best or whatever.
So
I
be known. I'm not jumping ahead, but be known mean to know yourself.
No, the angle that
Okay.
I came from was my whole life. I have, because that expectation has been, I've internalized that as my my MO, right? For my life. My goal is to be great, right? And that pressure. I think that it built up this internal desire of, I must be known
Okay.
by the
Okay.
world.
Okay. All right.
And the spin that I took on it is that is not a pure motivation. Our goal as Christians is to make Jesus known,
Mhm.
not for us to be known. When we make him known, then he says, you lift up my name, I'll draw all men unto myself. So when we make him known, he uses us in mighty ways. But being known has to be purified. That can't be, you can't have an ambition where it's just all about you, all about self. And so I've had to wrestle and battle that my whole life. And so now God has humbled me again to the point where my whole desire is just to make him known. And however he uses me is however he uses me. And so that I've had to twist that to, it's not about me being known, but it's about Christ being known.
All right, my friends. I have been talking with Nicole Plummer, and this to me is one of the fascinating stories. It is not as in my if I, and I don't want to minimize that, as dramatic as some stories that we've had here, that people like maybe crying behind the scene. But if you take in the story, if you're taking the story and journey with her and understand the deep inner, what's the word I want to use here, turmoil, maybe a good word, horror, um emotional distress.
Yes.
And you can put it all of those, trying to create this facade, and to live up to certain expectation unrealistically, or authentically, and but trying to be before now, another kind of be, right?
Mhm.
Another kind of be, but now is the real be. And something that I said to that I put out in a little inspirational thought, that there are a lot of people who know how to do church, but don't know how to be church, and they
That's
know how to do church but not to be church. And there is a reason why the beatitudes are be attitudes and not say attitude. So
Yeah.
but fascinating story. Our book will be available soon, my friend. You can go to our website at begintobemovement.com, and you can place an order
Yeah.
and journey with this lady, with her intelligence, and with her story. I'm just getting synopsis of it. I can't wait to get my copy of the book. You know, I'm sure I'm sure maybe she's going to send me an
Yes.
autograph copy so I can keep that and say, boy, I talked to her. I know what this is about. Now I can get the details
Yes.
of the book. But this is just a fascinating story. I am so happy to get to know you, at least to know a little bit about your story.
Right.
And the truth is that your story is not really, well, it is unique, but I'm sure there are a lot of people
Yes.
can relate. I'm sure step by step is not going to be the same thing, but I'm
Right.
sure that a great portion of your story, a lot of people, young people like you, older people, can relate to that. And sometimes those same things happen in relationships between husbands and wives, because sometimes one want to shape the other into
Right.
becoming what they want them to be.
Right.
And one of what I tell people all the time in premarital counseling, that you don't want to try to make over somebody who you're going to get married to. You don't want to reshape their life, because nobody want to be reshaped like
Right.
that. You got to meet me somewhere. We got a level of understanding, because if you, the moment you just want to make me into what you want me to be, then I'm looking for the next door out,
Right.
because
Exactly.
that becomes torture and hostage taking, and nobody want to become a hostage in a relationship. I'm just throwing it out there. But my friend, this is a great stories. And
Yeah.
let me just say to you, FYI, don't go look for Nicole Plummer on Facebook or YouTube and Twitter and none of those. So she's not there yet. She's not
Right.
there yet. She is still being processed. She's still going through the fire.
Yeah.
She's in the refiner's fire. And she's being processed. She believes that somewhere down the line, God's gonna break her out into these social media platform. But for right now, she's still on the potter's wheel.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
She's on the potter's wheel, being broken and reshaped. And as soon as her vessel is complete,
Yes.
then she's gonna break out and say, "Now here I am,
Yes.
all brand new, all remade, refashioned in just what the Lord wanted me to be."
Yes.
So I'm just throwing that out there. We had a long conversation before, but I'm not gonna go into that conversation now, because we've had that before.
Right.
But I just want to know you to know that. But I am so happy to have you, and I'm gonna give you the last word. And if I didn't ask you something that you think I should have, and it's burning on your mind, you want to share, then here is your moment to do that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Orville. This has been an amazing, very eye-opening, even for myself. I learn new things too as I'm sharing with your audience. Just the process of beginning to be. And I just want to encourage everyone that God loves you tremendously, that you never have to become something that you're not. You never have to hide behind a facade, a mask, or what others say about you. That you get to be exactly who God intended you to be before the foundations of the earth. That can never be taken from you. Um, and so, if you trust Him and allow Him and give Him a chance to just mold you and shape you into the version that He's always seen you to be from your mother's womb, you will be just completely shocked by you who you end up turning out to be. So that's it.
Wow. Something that popped into my mind when you were talking about coming back into your childhood bedroom and stuff like that. Something that came into my mind, that I bet when you came back, your bedroom wasn't as big as you thought it was when you left.
Not at all.
I bet you it was much smaller.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So with that comes more humility, right? With that comes more humility.
Oh, eating humble pie daily.
Thank you, Marcia Blair, my friend. God bless you. This is just one incredible story. I enjoy this conversation with you. I didn't know where it was going. I don't know this young lady is just a friend, a family friend of her that has connection. Made this suggestion that she could be on my program, and we jumped at it. And here she is with an amazing story. And if you're just joining, I hope you go back and listen from the beginning of the story and
Yeah.
and journey with her with the horror, the unseen horror,
Yeah.
the unseen horror. Because there are scars, and again, the book that I'm just about finishing up, Don't Judge Me by My Scars or Hold Me Hostage to My Past. There are scars that are unseen, and there are scars that
Yes.
are seen. And the scars that are unseen are long lasting, as well as those that can be seen. And the scars that are not seen sometimes are the worst scars,
Yes.
are the worst scars. Because the scars that can be seen, you can go to the clinic, or you can go to the emergency room, you can get them dressed, and you can get injection and all that thing, and you can get them healed, although the scars remain. But sometimes the emotional, psychological, mental scars that are internal, sometimes they don't go away. Because even when you try to climb on the ladder of success, sometimes those scars are weight on your legs and your
Yeah.
arms that prevent you from climbing. My friend, this was a great conversation. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, my friend Ray Holy. Thank you for joining. Hey, stories are the best things that have happened. God used them as sources of inspiration and blessing to help to change the lives of others. God bless your parents. I hope they're doing well. Give them a shout out.
Yes.
They invested a lot into you, and
Yes.
they help to shape you, as much as the pressure added to it. But
Right.
to come back and to relive and to pick your pieces up from where you started tells something. And the fact that you could come back home and your father and mother arms are still open. I'm finally, what was your brother's thinking?
With
Did
me.
he, what has he said to you when you realize, is he home too, or when you see you come back home? What was your brother's mentality of his little sister?
Like every Jamaican, like, are you? Where's your job? Do you have a job? Did you get a job yet? Are you working yet? And not just one job, but like 3 jobs, 4 jobs.
Wow, wow. Whew.
Tree job, 4 job.
God bless you. I wish you success. I hope I'll hear more about you.
Yeah.
I hope I'll remember the name when you excel, when you climb, or when you show up on social media. Make your first connection with me, right? There is ORB Ministries is everywhere. Where I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and I am on TikTok as well, because I am taking ministry wherever the Lord gives me open doors. So, my friends, if you have not yet connected yourself with me, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on TikTok or Twitter, wherever you are, and make sure you stay connected, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation. There are a lot more people like Nicole Plummer out there in the world, and maybe God's going to bring them to be part of my story, of my ministry. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, hey, the door is open. Let's have a conversation. If you know somebody that might have a story, you're also asked to make your suggestion or your recommendation. She had been recommended by somebody, family friend, and you get a chance to listen to her story. May God bless you. God bless you. Pansy Plummer. Hold on. Who is Pansy Plummer? Maybe you can tell me there's another plumber somewhere there. Who is Pansy Plummer?
Hi, mom.
Oh,
That's my
that's your mom?
love you, mom.
Hello, mom. Hello, mom. Mama Pansy. God bless. God bless you. Oh, I didn't see she's a great interview. My daughter. I should have taken notice of that. I just saw the Pansy Plumber at the top. Okay, so great. My bad on that. Thank you, mom, for raising up a beautiful daughter, instill value in her, and and show her what it means to keep on fighting even when you hit the ground. You
Yeah.
hit rock bottom, you come back up like Woody Woodpecker, you keep on fighting, and the fight is not over until you have no fight left in you. I heard somebody said the other day, there is always something else to do until there is nothing else to do.
Yes.
Right? There is
Right.
always something else to do, that until there is nothing else you can do. So here we are. God bless you, my sister.
God bless.
Kudos to you. Blessings on your journey. Keep your head up. God will hold your hand. And I can't wait for you to come out of the wilderness.
Yes.
I can't wait for you to come out of the wilderness, because there's a big world out there. There's
Yeah.
a huge world out there. And the bigger world need to hear your story. And a few people are gonna hear it now, because I recorded it. And
Yeah.
so everybody can share it on their social media, share it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, share it around and let them hear her story. God bless you. I'll see you next week, God's willing. You never know what's next or who's going to join the conversation. My sister, you're going to stay with me. We're going to get off where we started. But my friends, I will see you again next week on another Let's Talk with the Doc. Until then, peace be multiplied unto you. Stay strong, stay safe, stay encouraged, stay inspired, and make sure all your internal wounds are healed by the mercy and the grace of God. And if you can't manage by yourself, find some help somewhere.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye.
Well, thank you for checking in on ORB Ministries. I trust that you will share with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, and stay tuned, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation.